Loose change. Holy shit!
Back then, when I walked out of the movie theatre, I felt as if I had just woken up from a very long dream. In my head, green lines of code were still falling endlessly. The whoosh of bullet time cut through the air, and Keanu Reeves's bewildered eyes lingered as Neo whispered, "What is the Matrix?" Those images stayed with me throughout my youth like a question that never received a clear answer. But it wasn't until much later, after watching The Matrix again, and then again, that I began to notice something else. There were strange details I had completely missed the first time. Did you know that from the very first second, we are not watching The Matrix from a human point of view, but from the point of view of the one observing them? And that a far darker, more pathological version of The Matrix was forced to be buried because it spoke too directly about how humans are turned into resources. Even the prophecy of the one, which we once believed to be hope, is in fact just a mechanism designed to keep people quietly inside the cage. Today, we will reopen doors that were long shut and look straight at the 12 darkest secrets that The Matrix has hidden for more than 2 decades. 12. You are watching the film from The Matrix's POV, not from a human one. I still remember how strange the opening of The Matrix felt back then, cool in an unsettling way. A black screen. Then, green letters raining down endlessly. No character to latch onto, just something nameless breathing with the rhythm of a machine. The first time I watched it, I thought, oh, hacker visuals. But the more you re-watch it, the more disturbing it becomes because this is a point of view. Those lines of code don't appear as mere background decoration. They fill the entire frame as if the film is telling us this is how this world is seen. Then the camera plunges straight into phone numbers, a strange, cold zoom, exactly like the way a system tracks and locks onto a target. No emotion, only coordinates. And just as you're starting to figure out where you're going, you're thrown into the beam of police flashlights sweeping across the room like a search scanner. What's terrifying is this: we think we're following Trinity. But in reality, the film has just pulled off a subtle trick. We are stepping into the role of the hunter. We are not led in by a human heart. We are led in by mechanisms of observation, tracking and scanning. And Trinity, in those first moments, is not our protagonist. She is a target being boxed in. That is how control works in real life. It doesn't need chains at first. It only needs the right to observe. Once a system can see you, name you, and locate you, you've already lost halfway. Because from that moment on, you are no longer a person. You are an object. That opening sequence is like a brutal reminder in the world of The Matrix. Freedom doesn't disappear through violence. It disappears when you grow accustomed to being watched. 11. Color as a propaganda filter. Green is simulation. Blue is reality. There's a strange feeling when you watch The Matrix for the first time, hard to name, but you sense that the world in the film feels cold in its own way, as if the image is coated with something. When I was younger, I thought it was just a 90s color style. Only much later did I realize this isn't style. It's a tool. Inside The Matrix, green seeps into everything. The lights, the walls, human skin, even the air itself. It makes every shot feel like it's passing through a screen, a pane of glass, something not quite real. But when Neo falls into the real world, the palette shifts to blue, colder, paler, stripped of life. A strange inversion. The fake looks richer and more beautiful, while the real is bare and brutal. And here's where the film goes deeper. Color isn't just used to distinguish spaces. It's a way of training your brain. Gradually, you develop an unconscious reflex. Green equals simulation, blue equals reality. No dialogue needed, no captions required. Repeat it long enough and the brain becomes confident that it understands. But that very sense of understanding is the trap. Because once you're used to the filter, you'll believe the frame it constructs even when it leads you to the wrong conclusion. This is a familiar mechanism of propaganda and media. It doesn't have to invent stories. It only has to colour things correctly, make some things feel warm and trustworthy, and others cold and alien. The audience does the rest, hating, fearing, choosing sides, all while believing it was their own decision. The Matrix isn't just telling a story about a programmed world, it is programming your sense of real versus fake right inside your eyes. 10. Matrix code isn't real code, it's designed to deceive the eye. Do you remember the feeling the first time you saw the Matrix code? Something both mysterious and hypnotic. Characters falling like rain too fast to read, yet giving you the sense that you're looking inside the machine. Back then, I believed it was real code, as if I were good enough, I could read the secrets of the world from it. But rewatching the film, I realised that belief itself is the trap the movie wants you to fall into, because the code doesn't need to be correct. It only needs to look correct. It exists as a visual prop, something that makes you feel, oh, this is a computer. This is a system. This is digital reality. You can't read it, but you still believe it because it's designed to create the impression of logic. It's a familiar trick when something is too complex to verify, people tend to accept it. More importantly, the code is made of mirrored characters. Embedded in the very language of the Matrix is the motif of reflection. Everything is a copy, a mirror. Image truth turned inside out. This doesn't stop at the visuals. It spreads into the structure of the film itself. The mirror scene where liquid metal crawls over Neo's skin like an initiation ritual. Reflective surfaces appearing again and again, reminding us that the reality we're seeing is only a layer. The real subtlety is this. The most effective control systems don't need you to understand how they work. They only need you to be familiar with their symbols. The green code becomes a symbol. See it and you automatically think Matrix machines the truth underneath. That's why Matrix code is frightening. Not because of what it says, but because of what it teaches you to do, to trust what you don't understand simply because it looks like the truth. 9. The music is reflecting you. In the past, when I thought back on the Matrix, I mostly remembered the images. Black leather coats, green code, bullet time. The music felt like something that just made my heart beat a little faster. Tense, cold, modern. But when I rewatched the film, especially during times when I turned up the speakers and simply listened, I realised something else. The music in The Matrix doesn't just accompany the images. It is speaking to you. Don Davis's score sounds like a heavy, oppressive mass of sound packed with tension. But if you listen closely, its structure is not chaotic at all. It operates through very clear call and response motifs. One instrument speaks first, then another group repeats or answers it as if looking into a mirror. These are not melodies meant to be hummed, but questions and answers. Call and response. Repeat and reflect. This feeling closely mirrors how the Matrix itself operates in the film. The system doesn't impose itself directly. It sends out a signal. You react. It records that reaction and sends the next signal more refined, more precisely fitted. The music reproduces that loop with uncanny accuracy. You hear a note, then hear it return from another direction with a different tone color. Gradually, you grow accustomed to the rhythm, even if you can't put a name to it. The key point is this: you don't need to understand the music for it to affect you, just as you don't need to understand the system to live inside it. The music of the Matrix doesn't guide your emotions through a classic build-up and release. It holds you in a constant state of tension with no real place to rest. As if the film wants you to feel this is not a world where you relax. This is a world of feedback control and endless loops. 8. Trinity and theology. The film uses a sacred garment to talk about power. The first time we watch The Matrix, we accept Trinity as something natural, a cool, strong, mysterious female hacker. Unlike most action heroines of that era, the name Trinity sounds stylish, unusual, vaguely philosophical. But it took me a long time to realize that this name is not neutral at all. It is a declaration. Trinity, the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. a foundational concept of Christianity. When this sci-fi film chooses that name for a central character, it isn't just borrowing it for flair. It is embedding an ancient language of power into a technological narrative. And it's not only the name. Numbers like Room 303 framing compositions lines of dialogue that carry the cadence of sermons. All of these create a strangely familiar feeling, even if we can't quite identify why. Power has always loved doing this, sanctifying itself. When a system puts on a sacred cloak, it is no longer a structure that can be wrong. It becomes order destiny, the way things must be. And once a story takes on a sacred tone, people instinctively lower their guard. We don't argue with faith, we believe. The Matrix understands this perfectly. It doesn't preach, it merely hints. It places sacred symbols in just the right spots, enough to create the sense that some greater meaning is operating behind the scenes. And when viewers feel that this story is big, deep, true, they are more willing to accept it, even when it is talking about humans being controlled. Art, when combined with the sacred, can become a very effective tool for legitimizing power. 7. Bullet time isn't just for style, it's a metaphor for privileged consciousness. There's no denying that bullet time is what turned the Matrix into an icon. Back then, the entire theatre gasped when Neo arched his body to dodge bullets. That shot was replayed, copied, and parodied endlessly for years. But the more I revisit the film, the more I see that bullet time was never there simply to give the audience a thrill. Bullet time appears only at very specific moments when a character's perception changes. When they begin to wake up. When they stop reacting purely on instinct. Time slows down, not because the world has changed, but because the character's consciousness has changed. The rest of the world continues rushing forward at its original speed. This creates a very clear hierarchy. Some characters live entirely within the normal flow of the Matrix. They run, they fall, they die quickly and efficiently. And then there are a few, very few, who are allowed to see time differently. This is not a random superpower, it is a privilege. In any system of control, not everyone is granted equal access to truth. Most people are allowed to live only at the tempo the system sets. A small number, once they understand the rules, begin to see the cracks. Bullet time is the visual embodiment of those cracks. It excites us, but it also reminds us that this ability is not meant for everyone. And that is precisely why bullet time is not democratic. It does not say that anyone can wake up. It says that to see the truth, you must pay a price. You must suffer. You must be disoriented. You must step out of the safe rhythm. Most people in the film don't do that, and most people in real life don't either. 6. Neo is forged into a mask. Into the memory of many viewers, Neo is a quiet hero. Soft-spoken, emotionally restrained, never flamboyant. But the more I revisit the film, the clearer it becomes. Neo was not written to be a complete human being. He was deliberately hollowed out. Keanu Reeves brings a very particular face to the role, one that barely changes. Whether running, panicking in pain, or awakening, his expression remains largely neutral. No emotional explosions. No over-explaining through performance. And that very lack is the key. Neo does not force you to understand him. Neo makes space for you to step in. In mainstream cinema, the more specific a protagonist is, the more the audience remains an outside observer. But the emptier the character, the easier it is for viewers to fill them in themselves. Neo is a minimalist framework, an ordinary man, disillusioned, confused, suspicious of reality. Not exceptionally smart, not overwhelmingly strong, not sharply defined. And because of that, he becomes a perfect avatar. You don't need to be like Neo. You only need to feel that you could be Neo. His questions. What is the Matrix are not the questions of a hero. They are the questions of anyone who has ever had a moment where the world felt out of alignment. And when Neo rises, fights, and finally awakens, that sense of victory does not belong entirely to the character. It is shared with the viewer. This is the Matrix's mechanism of mass identification, turning the hero into a mask, an empty mold into which each viewer can pour their own hopes, fears, and desire to be special. 5. The One is not destiny, it is a choice against the frame. In many people's memories, The Matrix is a story about the chosen one. Neo is the one. The prophecy says so. The oracle says so. The film's entire structure seems to guide us toward that conclusion. But the more I rewatch it, the more I see the film playing a dangerous game. It makes us believe in destiny, then slowly takes it away. Look closely at the red pill and the blue pill. On the surface, it is a moment of free choice. But in the reflection on Morpheus's glasses, something strange appears. Even the choice itself has already been framed. In reality, the pill functions as a tracking program that allows the group to locate Neo's physical body. And the oracle, treated as the voice of truth, tells Neo that he is not the one. Not because he lacks ability, but because he is not yet ready to choose. The core of the Matrix does not lie in the prophecy. It lies in the fact that Neo is not granted oneness by the system. He takes it, not through strength, not through knowledge, but by daring to step beyond fear, daring to act when there is no guarantee he will win. Systems of control love destiny. Because when everything is preordained, people stop taking responsibility for their choices. The Matrix flips this logic. It says, if Neo truly is the one, it is not because he is special, but because he decides to become that person. And that is the moment the system loses. Not when the truth is revealed, but when an individual refuses the frame that has been built for them. 4. The city as borrowed memory. Chicago in the script, Sydney on screen. The first time I watched The Matrix, I barely noticed the city. It was just some American metropolis, glass skyscrapers, grid-like streets, grey offices, hurried crowds. Everything was so familiar that it didn't need a name, and that very familiarity is what should raise suspicion. Only on later viewings did I notice something odd. The script repeatedly references Chicago, the 312 area code, street names like Wells or Lake. There's even a photo of Chicago hanging in Neo's boss's office. Yet the film was shot in Sydney, a completely different city on the other side of the world. So why pretend it's Chicago? The answer lies in sensation, not geography. The Matrix doesn't need a real city. It needs one that feels familiar enough that you won't question it. Chicago here is not a place. It's a collective memory, a modern American city that countless people have already seen through movies, television, and news. You don't need to have lived there to feel like you've passed through it. That makes it the ideal space for a control system. Not distinctive enough to draw attention, not foreign enough to trigger suspicion. A place that feels vaguely familiar, where everything looks the way it's supposed to look. And when the world around you feels sufficiently real, your brain will automatically ignore the details that don't quite fit. A street corner that feels a bit too empty. A rhythm of life that feels slightly soulless. A faint sense of artificiality. All of it is easily dismissed because the overall picture feels right. A system of control doesn't need to build a perfect world. It only needs to build one that's similar enough. Similar enough for you to keep going to work, keep believing, keep living without ever stopping to ask, is something wrong? 3. Cipher is the film's most honest answer. Humans choose a comfortable prison. In The Matrix, Agent Smith is often remembered as the main antagonist. Cold, ruthless, filled with hatred for humans. But the more I rewatch the film, the more I realise Smith is not the most frightening figure. Cipher is. Because Cipher does not represent machines. He represents us. Cipher does not betray his friends because he is tortured, deceived, or confused about what he is doing. On the contrary, he is one of the people who understands the Matrix most clearly. He knows this world is fake. He knows the truth outside is cold and meaningless. And precisely because he knows, he chooses to go back. The steak he eats in the scene with Agent Smith is not just food. It is a confession. I know it isn't real, but I still want it to taste good. Cipher does not want freedom if freedom means pain, poverty, and a naked, brutal truth. He wants his memories reinserted. He wants to be someone important. He wants to live inside a soft illusion. And the most unsettling part is his choice is entirely reasonable, not insane, not cowardly, just deeply human. Here, The Matrix poses its central question but refuses to answer it for you. Is freedom still worth it if it comes with loneliness, loss, and suffering? Or are we willing to trade it for comfort, manufactured meaning, and the feeling that everything is fine? Cipher is not a villain because he is evil. He is terrifying because he says out loud what many people don't dare to admit. If given the choice, a great many of us would willingly step into a prison as long as it has warm lighting and a steak that tastes good enough. The most frightening villain is not Agent Smith. It is the part of us that wants to be Cipher. 2. Simulacra and simulation hollowed out philosophy turned into a shell. There is a detail in The Matrix that I barely noticed the first time I watched it. Neo opens a thick book hollowed out inside and hides a floppy disk within it. A very cool, very hacker-like gesture, but only later when I learned that the book was simulacra and simulation did I feel a chill. This is not just any book. It is a philosophical work about simulation replacing reality, about a world where humans no longer encounter the real, but live inside increasingly refined layers of copies. And ironically, in the film, that very book has been hollowed out, reduced to a shell, used to store something deemed more useful. This is not a random joke. It is an extraordinarily blunt image philosophy. Ideas the big questions about the nature of reality. All of them can be gutted, leaving only the outer cover to signal depth. What matters is no longer the content, but the feeling. The feeling that we are engaging with something meaningful. Neo does not read the book, he uses it, and the world around us does the same. Many concepts, freedom awakening identity, are repeated like labels. We hang them up, display them, but rarely confront the uncomfortable consequences they actually carry. Meaning is drained away, leaving behind a form that looks good enough to be reassuring. The Matrix does not lecture philosophy. It shows us how philosophy is treated in a consumer society, not banned, but hollowed out. And that is the most sophisticated form of control, not smashing ideas, but turning them into harmless props. 1. Ghost in the shell as the underlying shadow, the hacked self as the core fear. The first time I watched The Matrix, I didn't think about Ghost in the shell. I just saw a world of hackers, leather coats, cables, and humans fleeing from machines. But the more I revisit the film, the harder it is to deny that a shadow is always standing quietly behind it. Not to copy, but to share the same obsession. Both films confront an unsettling question: if memory, body, and identity can all be programmed, then who is me? In Ghost in the Shell, Major Kusanagi lives inside a replaceable body, a shell that can be swapped out. In The Matrix, Trinity and Neo live inside assigned identities, names given by the system. The difference is surface level. The core fear is the same. The self is no longer stable. Trinity carries many traces of the Major: short black hair, precise movement, efficient violence, and a chill that borders on the inhuman. But more importantly, she carries the same lingering question: if I can be rewritten, am I still me? And when humans begin to doubt the boundaries of their own selves, what do? They look for a story to cling to, an explanation strong enough to replace the sense of emptiness, a system that tells them who they are, where they belong, and why things are the way they are. The Matrix understands this perfectly. It does not take away human freedom through brute force. It offers a story coherent enough that people willingly place themselves inside it. When the final green lines of code fall, The Matrix does not truly end. It simply falls silent. And in that silence, the film leaves us not with an answer, but with a lingering discomfort. Because once all the layers are peeled back from the observer's point of view, the use of colour,